Hi, thanks for joining Instor's webinar on TIA 942 Data Center Standards. I'm Jack Vonich, President of Instor Solutions. I have joining with me Nabil Mahmoud, Instor's Interim CIO, and Joseba Calvo with EPI, a fully accredited TIA 942 certification company. Today's webinar will explore why the TIA 942 standard is important to business continuity, disaster recovery, and uptime and availability. Nabil is now going to introduce our guest. Nabil?
Thank you, Jack. Joseba, welcome to our webinar. Joseba is an international data center professional and businessman. He has extensive hands-on knowledge with technical and commercial expertise, a combination that has made him successful in all of his ventures. I've known Joseba for about 20 years. He has co-founded several successful data center companies and has over 20 years of experience in various roles, including project management for modular data centers and IT services for hundreds of companies worldwide. Joseba holds an international certification for data center design, build, governance, operations, migration standards, and compliances, such as CDCE, CTDC, CTIA, and a bunch of other certifications. He's also an ANSI, TIA 942, and DCOS auditor and consultant, ISO 27000 and ISO 22301, lead auditor, and ISO IEC 9000 consultant. Joseba is an active member of a number of data center professional groups and technical committees as TIA. He's a part of TIA committee for TR42, part of TIA Edge Data Center Working Group, and Data Center Oversight Working Group. Joseba, thank you again for joining us. So let's start with what is TIA 942?
Yes, thank you, Nabil, for the introduction, and thank you to all to join this webinar. So TIA 942, and this is very important, is an international standard for data centers. And with this new scheme, okay, TIA 942 is the first and currently the only official data center standard with an accredited certification scheme. That is very important. TIA 942 is an international standard for data centers, not only telecommunications that some people think, but the whole data center infrastructure.
Cool. Hey, so what are some of the benefits of TIA 942?
Yes, no, the benefits of the TIA 942, first is that it's a standard. So being a standard, okay, it has a committee of 40, 50 people, okay, from different industries, worldwide people, okay, so they have the best people in the world in that committee in order to build this standard for data centers. Second, this TIA 942 provides all the requirements for the design of the data center as a baseline, okay? And the main thing is the risk mitigation. Why? Because this standard covers, okay, his scope covers all aspects of the infrastructure as architectural, telecommunications, security, safety, etc. Of course, electrical, mechanical, monitoring, etc. So you don't have any latent risk. So you truly mitigate the risk and identify all the risks and mitigate properly.
Nice.
So Joseba, a couple of questions here. So first of all, how does TIA 942 compare for the likes of uptime tiers and others? And secondly, how long has TIA been in the industry?
No, good questions. Well, I think first, how long? So TIA 942 started the working group as a standard in 2001, okay? And the first version of the standard was in 2005. So it has almost more than 15 years, okay? First. Second, since then, there have been several versions of the TIA 942 because always the standards update their versions in order to update to the industry and to the new developments, okay? So now the last version is the TIA 942B 2017, okay? And this is the standard and how long. Second question about the comparison. Well, as I told you before, the most important thing is that the TIA 942 is a true standard because it's done by a TIA organization which is authorized by ANSI in order to do standards, okay, as ISO, BICSI, etc. Whereas others, okay, as you mentioned, are only guidelines or white papers, okay, and this is different, so it's not an official standard, okay? So that is very important. And this gives also warranty to the customer that being a standard is audited and certified by an independent entity, so it's not a conflict of interest. So that is very important. These are the most important thing, to be a standard beyond the guideline or technical paper, and of course the scope, which is of course wider in order to mitigate the risk.
So what percentage of data center operators use TIA 942 standards versus the others? Is there a big difference?
Well, yes, actually the data is usually, you can do the data according the number of data centers certified, but of course, really if you see the data centers certified according to existing data centers is very slow. So the real data is really how many versions of the standard has been downloaded worldwide, and up to date is more than 9,000 downloads worldwide of the standard
Wow.
TI 942. So this means that a lot of people is really following the TI 942 in order to build the data centers. No? So this is the difference, and that's why it's because it gives a baseline on how to build a data center to have this risk mitigation that we were talking about and to have this reliability.
Right.
So for our viewers, could you expand on what are some of the major risks that TI 942 standard addresses?
Yes, this is very important about the risk, because of course in the risk, and we have seen this because of, unfortunately, this pandemic, right? At the end of the day, the risk changes. Before the pandemic, the risk has one level, and because of the pandemic, those risks may change, okay? So that's why it's important to not have any latent risk, hidden risk, because then when it appears a pandemic, this hidden or latent risk becomes critical. And that's the problem. And that's why TI is very important, because the TI 942 gives you the baseline, okay, how to build a data center on the 4 rating levels, okay, on architectural, site location, security, telecommunication, electrical, etc. For instance, let's give here an example on the risk about seismic, because, well, in California, okay, in the West Coast, as Chile, Peru, okay, usually
seismic's
the
important.
West, yes. Then seismic zones, okay, are very important, and how you mitigate the risk, because we have done some audits in data centers in the West Coast that the racks are not bolted to the ground, and they are not seismic zone mitigation. So this is important, and this is one of the things that really the standard gives a baseline on how to mitigate depending on the rating, okay? So you mitigate that risk. So if you have an issue, as you have the risk mitigation, the problem is nonsense, so you are good. So this is the most important thing.
Do you mind expanding a little bit more on those ratings? Is that kind of like tier levels or something like that? How does that work?
Yes, no, this is very important about the ratings, because this is one of the things that most of the people, they don't understand, because I have seen and listen, as you also maybe, sometimes rating 2 plus, rating 3 plus plus, or rating 4 minus, and
right.
This is not real. So the ratings are because you meet some requirements, and we will explain accordingly so it's clear on that. The ratings, okay, are as follows. 4 ratings, starting with rating 1, which is basic. Basic means that this data center is susceptible to disruptions from both planned and unplanned activity on the distribution path and equipment, because they don't have any redundancy of paths and equipment. It can be disruptions because there is no redundancy, okay? Of course, it's a single path, no redundant equipment, no compartmentalization, okay? And the security controls are very limited. This is rating 1 baseline. And depending on your business, you may need rating 1 is good enough for you. Rating 2. Rating 2 means redundant components. This means that the data center is susceptible to disruptions from both planned and unplanned activity on the distribution path. But now, because you have redundant components, it's able to handle plant maintenance or faults on a single piece of equipment. So it has more reliability, okay? Of course, the redundant components in a single path for electrical, mechanical, and telecommunications, okay? Very important. And it has more controls over security, safety, monitoring. And here, also is a requirement for preventive maintenance, okay? That should be performed as specified by manufacturers. This looks a little bit silly, but that's true because there are some data centers that the maintenance is not performed so accurate by manufacturers. So this is a problem, okay? So this is rating 2. Rating 3, rating 3 is concurrently maintainable. What does it mean? It means that the data center is able to handle plant maintenance on any part of the distribution path or any single piece of equipment or component without any interruption of the data center. Meaning that you can change, maintain, or substitute any equipment at any time in a plant maintenance, okay, without any problem, okay? So you have dual paths, one active, one passive, okay, for power, cooling, and telecommunications. And of course, some compartmentalization of the different areas of the data center. Of course, improve physical security, monitoring, also maintenance, training requirements. So this is the rating 3 requirements, okay? And then finally, the rating 4, which is the fault tolerant. A fault-tolerant data center is able to handle one single fault at a time of any part of the distribution path or any piece of equipment without any interruption of the data center. So having a fault, for instance, means one medium voltage transformer has an explosion, okay, or fails, okay. It happened a few times, but it might happen. So you have the B medium voltage transformer to handle and support the data center in an end operation. So you can withstand one fault without any problem. So you have dual path, okay, on cooling, electrical, telecommunications, of course, separation of the rooms on the areas, okay, for this fault tolerance, compartmentalization is key here. Of course, very strong physical security controls, maintenance, training, etc., monitoring, etc. So these are the difference on the 4 ratings. So really, you can have a baseline. And when you say rating 3 plus, really it's a baseline. And depending on your business, maybe you increase a little bit the requirements because you need more reliability on one thing than another because of the location that you are or your business. But the baseline is the rating, which is the minimum.
Well, thank you. That was a great explanation, Joseba. So, I mean, a question that I would ask thereafter would be, is there like a percentage that you come up with as it entails to a certain rating level for uptime and availability that other competitors in the marketplace that are non-certifiable bodies come up or have come up with in the past?
No, this is a very good question. And actually, if you see the website, you can find some of these numbers, the famous 6-9 rule, right, about the availability. And this is since 5 or 4 years ago, it's not anymore valid, really. They don't talk about that because it's not true, because the problem is that that availability was based only on electrical and cooling, on the failures for electrical and cooling. But what happens with telecommunications? What happens with security? What happens with safety? What happens if you have a seismic? So there are so many things that they are not included beyond operations. You have the process and procedures and the human error. So made no sense. It's really a nonsense availability because the availability covers more than that. That's why really those numbers are not anymore valid. Even some people, they use it, but it does not make sense.
So another question onto that. So, you know, I think one of the things that I really have enjoyed in talking to and getting to know about TI 942 is the fact that it's just not the mission critical physical infrastructure layer, but you're getting into the telco space. On the other side of the fence, we also have noticed that there's multiple different standards and protocols when it comes down to IT and application layer? Is that something, and they're like the total opposite, like a risk rating, one means that it's excellent in IT space. Is there any thoughts, any discussions, any future vision of consolidating and unifying the whole mission critical space at some point in time?
No, this is a good question because, of course, it has been a discussion, but it's very complicated to, it would be great, but it's very complicated to tie infrastructure, operations, IT equipment all in one to see how reliable is a data center, right? How you really rate that, no? So really at this point, okay, and in TIA, really, they focus on infrastructure in this case. So to make sure that the infrastructure, which is the basement of the data center, is proper, where you will install the IT servers, okay? So depending on this infrastructure, you will install your IT servers. For instance, some people, now we are in the edge data center group, okay? In the edge data center group, the IT has more importance, right? And in some edge data centers, they claim that if one edge data center fails, another edge data center can take over, no? In order to fulfill those services. And we had those discussions, but it was too complicated, and we saw that it's easier. The infrastructure, maybe you say, I can have the edge data centers rating 1, okay, because it's good enough, because even one edge data center fails, okay, because it's basic. I don't care because I have another one that can take over if this fails. So for me, with the IT, I can manage it in a way that rating 1 is good enough. So with that architectural is good enough, and that's the route and the direction that TIA is taking in order to adapt for the future for the edge data center rating.
How about accreditation? You know, you can go in and you can audit to these rating levels, but to really get your data center accredited and certified, how does that work?
No, this is important. Another point, because it's a standard, no? And avoid conflict of interest. So you cannot be a designer and certify a data center, or a consultant, or try to do the guideline and audit and certify. So the standard and the rules are the company, an organization like TIA, authorized company, that's the standard. That's it. And creates the accreditation scheme. And then a third party is a certified body that is accredited, okay, and tested that they can fulfill the requirements. And this third party, as a certified body, gets the accreditation, okay, certification in order to be able to audit and certify the end users. So with that, the clients will have guarantee that this company, this audit company, is a certified body and accredited, means that this company follows the rules in order to make the audits properly, because this accredited company is audited every year. So every year they audit this company in order to make sure that they perform the audits properly. So any data center in US, in Latin America, in Europe, in Singapore, Japan, Australia, it does not matter, is the same. So the rules are the same, and there is no conflict of interest. So that is very important, and this is accreditation. That's why it's independent parties and accredited, and each year we have an audit to make sure that the audits are done properly.
Yeah, it sounds very important.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to add to that, I want to switch gears just a little bit. With all the travel that you have done and all the data centers globally that you've walked and certified and audited and gone through this cycle, could you share some good, bad, and ugly experiences with our viewers?
Well, no, well,
You must have seen a few.
No. The point, and the other day I recall that I was talking to a data center here in US, in the East Coast, and he was telling me, no, but our data center is rating 3, but well, we want to audit it because we want to make sure, because also the customers are asking us, right? And most of the people, they tell, no, everybody is rating 3. Concurrent maintainable. It's like the rule, no, that everybody wants to meet, no? And really, you see places that is weird. For instance, I recall one of the Fortune 500 companies that they claimed they were rating 3, and they had 2 mechanical loops for water. It was a chill water installation. And in a 60 feet length, arriving to the data center, that loop, double loop, came to only one loop in 60 feet. So
it's a problem.
That's it. Because if this 60 feet you need to maintain, that's it, it's over. So it's not. What is the problem now? The risk. So the company thinks that they are rating 3. They don't know the risk is a latent risk, and if they have a problem, that risk becomes critical. So that is an issue. So this is one of the things that we have seen. Or for instance, in another data center, we saw that, well, we were looking the exit doors, no, in order to see the emergency doors. And we saw the plans in order to see the routes in order to do the escape, no, for safety. And we saw that the safety routes were different where the exit doors were. So, well, where I run to. So really in one of the doors that they had an exit door, you were entering in a closed room. So it's dangerous, it's safety, it's a risk.
Absolutely.
So that is why you need to, or for instance, and the last one in telecommunications, I'm trying to give also different cases of different scopes, no? In telecommunications, rating 3 means you have 2 different entrance rooms for different providers, but 50% of the customers in that data centers, all the providers that they were receiving the telecommunications were coming from the same entrance room, because they were doing a bridge between the 2 entrance rooms. So now, if that entrance room has a problem, they are done. They don't have telecommunications. So it's a risk. So that is why it's important, those audits, in order to make sure about risk mitigation. That's it, in order to be able to manage it properly and avoid problems.
Yeah, that's an interesting story for sure. So when you're going through all these audits, you know, what happens at the end of the audit? How does the audit process work, and how does it roll when it goes through to the end there?
Well, on the cases I talked before, they don't get the certification, right?
Oh, that's a bummer. It makes sense.
If you don't have that, of course you get. So no, really. So what it comes to is a report with major and minor non-conformities and areas for improvement. So you get the certification if you don't have any major non-conformity. Major non-conformity means that you don't breach the outcome of the rating. For instance, if you are doing the rating 3, concurrent maintainability, if your non-conformity means that you cannot do concurrent maintainability, is a major non-conformity, because you cannot do major concurrent maintainability. For instance, in this mechanical thing, in this mechanical case, because they have 60 feet, only one pipe, they cannot do concurrent maintainability. So it's a major non-conformity. They fix that in order to get the certification. So really at the end, it comes a report with the major and minor non-conformities. Then if they don't have, if they fix the major, we do another audit in order to make sure that they were fixed, and we can award the certification. If they don't have any major non-conformity and only minor and areas for improvement, they are awarded with the certification, but they need to do a corrective action report in order to see how they will mitigate the risk on those non-conformities in order to avoid problems. So this is a little bit the path at the end of the audit.
So, you know, with COVID-19 and everything that's going around the world, I mean, it's totally transformed and transitioned into a really bizarre circumstance. So, you know, one of the things that I've actually been really talking about and coming across is governance. With TI 942, how do these standards impact governance within an organization?
No, this is important, and this relates a little bit with my previous example, okay? And about risk. How you can do governance if you don't know your risk. If you have latent risk that you don't know, governance is very difficult, because you are taking decisions without knowing the reality, and then you have a big problem. So that's why the impact on governance is huge, because if you don't know the risk, you cannot do governance. So to be able to do these audits on TI 942 gives you a true understanding on how your infrastructure is, so you can do your governance properly. For instance, if you want to consolidate data centers, or you want to use some data centers for one use and other data centers for another use, you need to know exactly how they are the infrastructure, because if not, your governance and your use is not true, like in this case of the mechanical installation, because you think that is reliable to do concurrent maintainability and it's not. So that's why it's very important to meet the standards in order to be able to do the governance properly. And from the pandemic and COVID, as I told you before, the same. When you have a pandemic or you have a crisis situation, the risk values changes. Maybe they are low before the pandemic, but after the pandemic, they are high. For instance, cleaning, contamination in the data center. If you don't follow the technical cleaning standards like the ISO 14644, okay, and you follow the ASROI recommendations, you will have risk. Before the pandemic, it's not so much a problem, but now with the pandemic, it's very critical, right? Contamination. So that's why standards is very good to keep it up and so mitigate the risk and avoid hidden risk.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It kind of rolls into, you know, how does this relate into business continuity planning? It's very similar, but can you expand on that a little bit too?
No. Well, it's similar, but it's important because at the end of the day, business continuity planning is disaster recovery. So if you have an issue, what do you do? What happens if you have an issue? This is business continuity planning, no? So if you have an issue, if you don't know the risk, it's very difficult to do a proper business continuity planning. And again, you need to know all your risks to know how your infrastructure is, how is really the rating, the real rating, so you can do a true business continuity planning. Because if you do your business continuity planning thinking that you are a rating 3 when you are a rating 2, you will have a problem, and then your business continuity plan will fail, and then it's for nothing. So makes no sense. The company can fail. So that's why it's very important for business continuity to know exactly the infrastructure, to know all the risks, so you can build the right business continuity plan for your infrastructure in order to that your business relies and gives the reliable service to the customers, no?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Giuseppe, so a couple of quick things. With the ever-evolving world that we live in, we have become an information now culture, which means more computing, more data, right? So that means that it's a constant evolution of what's happening in the mission critical space. Mm-hmm. So you can walk into a data center today, and tomorrow there is a new application layer that's residing on that, or potentially a new build out within that space. Mm-hmm. So based on your experience, I mean, you do an audit, you go out, you certify them. To our viewers, could you expand on how often should they re-audit, re-evaluate, and what is the process for them to staying up to par?
No, actually, Nabil, a very good question, because it's another case study about those that we were mentioning before, that a data center was certified in 2008. So we did an audit in 2019, and theoretically that certification was valid forever. And when we did the audit, okay, of course, the data center, even they were super redundant, theoretically, they were down more than 8 hours. So you can imagine in a big colocation, 8 hours is a lot, okay? Yeah. Which was the cause? Well, the cause was very simple. They had two problems. One was they were doing maintenance on the air conditioning units, okay? And the technician, when he left the data center, he pushed the button to open the door and get out of the data center, and that button was the EPO. Oh. Of course, that's it. It's done. That does not matter what. So it's a safety thing, okay? how to label everything properly, how to do safety. And that's why those things are very important, okay, on how to manage risk, and also on procedures and operations, okay? And second problem they had, them, is that one machine, one air conditioning was not running, was not functioning. And they had 10. So theoretically, with 10 air conditionings, if one is not working, it's not a problem, no? But they installed 10 racks in one corner, higher density, 10 kilowatt per rack, and the average was 5. And because that air conditioning was off, the 10 racks went off because they didn't did the cooling system properly. So they got the certification before having those 10 racks to be rating 3. When they install those racks, they are even not rating 1. That's a huge problem for the customers.
Wow.
In the truth. That's why, and going to the question, when you certify it, it's very good. You meet the requirements, but the data centers are live. You are changing the data center. You are upgrading the data center. You are installing new equipment, new racks, new cabling, new things. So you need to recertify, and this is a standard for any ISO standard, every 3 years in order to make sure that you meet the standards and you are still up to date with the ratings and the outcome. And this is a warranty also for the customer and also for what we talked before. You know then on the recertification that your business continuity plan is still valid because you have the infrastructure properly and you can do a proper governance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, outstanding. So that's great. So one last question I have for you, Joseba. So in talking to a C-suite, right? So we have certified them, we have audited them, we have found where the errors are, we have advised them on making those changes and upgrades. And they go back after a certain time, what is it, about 30 to 60 days, I'd imagine, for them to rectify the situation? 30 days. So from an executive perspective, what are some of the core benefits? I mean, am I looking at potentially saving some money with insurance? Am I just, comfortable now with compliance that helps resolve my disaster recovery and business continuity strategy plans? What are some of the core benefits and the value proposition for TIA 942 that we should bring forth to our viewers here?
Yeah, no, and it's a good question because at the end of the day, everything goes to cost, right? So the most important one is that you reduce cost, okay, in operations. Why? Because you know how you have your infrastructure truly, so you operate your data center more efficient, so you reduce cost of operation. This is immediate. But second, okay, collateral effects of the savings, okay, are eventually, yes, you can reduce your insurance cost because you are certified, so you have an assurance that you meet some requirements, so your insurance has to be lower. Third, your cost, your unexpected cost, okay, is reduced because as you know how your infrastructure is and you know how to operate your infrastructure, you don't have any unexpected cost because you don't have any hidden risk. So that suddenly appeared and you need to expend money on that. So that is also very important, mitigation of the risk. So those will be the 3 major differences that you will have. And of course, a guarantee to the customer that the customer says, oh, you are certified, you had an audit every 3 years. So confidence from the customer that they are receiving a reliable service, no? And they have the service on a proper data center.
Yeah, those are all important. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
You want to just in overall, I really appreciate you sharing this with us, Joseba. It's really interesting, and it looks it's very important to our viewers to understand, these standards and what's important to apply to their data centers. You mind just giving us a quick summary? I know you kind of hit it there a little bit, but give us a quick summary on TIA 942, and why an audit and why to engage in this, just to help everyone understand and wrap things up here.
No, thank you, Jack. And here as a summary and conclusion, really, the three main points I think are, first, TI 942, okay, is a standard not only for telecommunications, but for data centers, and is a baseline. So really helps to understand how is your infrastructure, okay, first. Second, having this baseline, okay, and because of the scope of the standard, your risk is mitigated. So you are sure that you know which are the risks, so you know how to do governance, business continuity, and anything in the data center. And third, you can really guarantee to the customer the services that you are doing because you know what you have. And you can tell them, I know my infrastructure, I am doing my governance through my infrastructure, and that's why I can give you a reliable service. So that's why the three main reasons on why TI 942.
Perfect. Josiba, we really appreciate you coming on our webinar here and giving our viewers a quick rundown of TIA 942. Nabil, thank you so much for co-hosting with me. We really appreciate everyone participating here today. Thank you for taking the time to view our webinar, and stay tuned for more webinars as we go on. Thank you very much for joining. Bye-bye.